Welcome to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Eric with my co-host Robert. How you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing good. Ready to talk about some exciting uh, topics here. I think we're gonna do we're to be pretty different here on our players. So I'm ready to jump in.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Today we're planting the flag, right? We're going to be talking about some NFL players. We're going to be talking about some Devy players that we believe are going to do great, whether it's relative to their ADP or just in general, right? So we're really going to get our quote unquote players here.
Yeah. So some news today. So Darren Waller, he is uncertain for Week 1. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so right, Darren Waller's been fighting a hamstring injury for 2 weeks now. For most of August, and it really wasn't until the quote coming out of Vegas that he is uncertain for Week 1. Then that's what triggered me to say, okay, this could be an issue. Waller has been a superstar at fantasy recently, but last year injuries derailed the season. Also, he's an older player. So seeing a lingering soft tissue injury in August definitely has my antenna peaked or popped up. I'm worried. Now, how worried am I? No, he's not going to be irrelevant. He's not, I'm not crossing off the list, but he really easily aligns in the George Kittle category for tight ends for me. A player with really good talent that's produced at a elite level prior, but injury is starting to become a big question. So for me, this is definitely pushing Darren Waller down the list in both redraft, dynasty, whatever format you play, because I'm not that confident Darren Waller is going to play every game this season.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Any other big news that you think you want to talk about, or
Yeah, another injury news that I wanted to mention is Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup was not placed on PUP, physically unable to perform, right? And why is that significant? If you're placed on PUP, you have to miss a minimum of 4 games. So if they don't put him on PUP, right, they're using that roster spot saying, we want to reserve the right to play him in one of the first 4 weeks, which means that there's a good chance he plays in the first 4 weeks. Even if he doesn't, right, or maybe he's not fully up to speed, that tells me by at least, week 5, instead of us first getting a glance at what Michael Gallup can do in 2022, at that point, it's when I'm going to be really confident to put Michael Gallup on my lineup. Now, what can Michael Gallup be? He's had some moments where he's been an effective fantasy player, but it's this season where I expect the best that we've seen fantasy wise. I think he's the clear number 2 wide receiver, and you can make an argument maybe Dalton Schultz is the number 2 receiving weapon in that offense, but I think it's Gallup. I think Gallup's a very talented player. They gave him real money, real guaranteed money, and they did this before having any idea, how he would recover post ACL. So this is a player that has recovered quickly, and all signs, are doing well on their recovery. And I think he could be a great sleeper value in all formats of fantasy. I think he's going to push for wide receiver 2 numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I think Gallup's an interesting option, right? The injury really, it was kind of a concern, but at the same time, he was always projected to come back at least, towards the beginning of the season. So maybe not at the very beginning, but he is certainly ahead of schedule right now. So the other big news was the Tyron Smith injury out of Dallas, right? Dallas might not have a very good offensive line this year after that injury. They don't really have a good backup. So, what do you place this in terms of the offense as a whole, in terms of how that affects everything?
So this is kind of right. We just talked about Gallup and how great of news this is. Tyron Smith, almost cancels it out. So I'd say it's about a net zero in terms of value for the Dallas offense, especially for Dak Prescott. But Tyron Smith is a player that has played at an elite level. And 2 years ago, definitely 3 years ago, a lot of people would put Dallas on a very short list of the best offensive lines in football. I don't think anybody in the know would do that at this point. I certainly would not. I think last year they had an average offensive line, and this year they could go to potentially below average, right? Tyron Smith tore his hamstring. He could miss the entire year, right? He's ruled out indefinitely at the moment, but a torn hamstring sounds super serious to me. Don't worry about, Dak too much, especially if Gallup, is as healthy as this non-pup status makes me think, right? Two good weapons at wide receiver, a very, proven good tight end, and then two good running backs. I think their offense in general will be fine. I think Dak will be fine. But their depth is in trouble, right? If they have any more injuries, look out.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about the Cowboys offense right now. I think Tyron Smith is maybe not underrated, but he is underrated to how effective he is or how important he is to the Cowboys offense, right? I just think that with Tyron Smith going out, I think that the entire offense does suffer a pretty good amount. Now whether Gallup can make that up is another story, but I don't know. I don't think this is gonna be a good year for Dallas. Maybe in fantasy that's not the case, but I don't. I just think in terms of actual like NFL performance, I worry that this is not their year. So, any other news though you want to cover before we jump in?
No, that's probably good. I mean, there's so many little stories, but we talked about it in the last episode and we stressed a lot. Let's not overreact to news that happens in August unless it's definite, right? A serious injury, torn hamstring, obvious, right? We can count on that being serious. Yeah. So the little things, let them be little. Let's let the season play out, and let's just not overreact, folks.
Yeah. So let's just kind of give everybody a little idea of what's coming here. So, we each have our own list of people that we're, planting our flag on, and we're going to kind of explain our position, and then we're going to both react to the different persons, list. So we have college and NFL players. So, there's going to be plenty of topics about each and every one of these players. So, but let's go ahead and jump in. Eric, you want to get us started on your quarterbacks?
Yeah. So, right, the idea is that we're taking one player from each of these positions, that's in a high tier, what they're thought of, what they're valued as, what they're drafted at, and then one that's in a lower tier, right? And basically we're picking out, for me, Lamar Jackson, right? Lamar is QB5 right now in startups. He's 8th overall. So, right, obviously he doesn't have a lot of room to grow in terms of value, but Lamar Jackson is like, how many QBs actually can be the number one scoring fantasy player, the number one scoring quarterback in fantasy? There's not that many. And I definitely think Lamar Jackson is one of them. We've seen it, right? His MVP season in year 2 was near historic. It was a great year. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about Lamar Jackson, well, there's two actually. One, if you don't know about the contract situation, every other quarterback basically in the league is getting huge deals. Kyler was drafted a year later. Kyler got his deal. Lamar hasn't got his deal. Josh Allen got his deal. Really, Lamar and Josh Allen were the two QBs in that 18 class that, have had success. Like Baker, yes, a little bit, but no, obviously, right? There's not a long-term deal there. So what does that mean? He's playing for a lot of money. So I expect, a big year. Additionally, I really like what they've done personnel-wise, right? They've got just these big, fast players all around him, right? He's had success with Marquise Brown in the past, but I never thought Marquise Brown was a good, wide receiver quarterback combo with him, because he's not super accurate, but he's got a big arm, right? He can throw it deep. That certainly has been used well, with Marquise Brown's speed. But I love Rashad Bateman. This is a bigger receiver, can go get the ball, huge wingspan, and has good speed too. Then you pair, Mark Andrews, and in case you didn't see, Isaiah Likely explode in their last preseason game. I think Charlie Kolar, I think Mark Andrews, they're going to, have these big-bodied tight ends who are like, how do you defend them? They're going to be in 12 personnel a lot. So you're going to have to guard against the run because J.K. Dobbins is going to have a great year. So you're going to get advantages in the passing game. So I could see Lamar having a great season. I think I'll say it now. I'm playing my flag. QB2 season, right? I don't think he can knock off Josh Allen, but I think he's going to be QB2. So in my redraft rankings, that's where I'd be taking him as QB2.
Yeah, so I agree with you about Lamar for the most part. So Lamar Jackson's in a contract year, so he's going to be throwing the ball a lot, I feel like. He wants to prove that he is a, franchise quarterback. So my issue with Lamar is kind of that, right? I want to see him run the ball. Like, that's where he provides the most value in fantasy, is him running the ball, right? I think he's probably likely to be in the top 5. I don't know about QB2 overall, but I think he'll finish around there. I don't think it's going to be like a far and away difference between QB2 and QB5 though. So, because I could see Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar, even Patrick Mahomes. I could see all of them, kind of getting in that same grouping of players. And I think, as long as all of them stay healthy, I think all of them are gonna be in that tier and then be around that point value. So I don't have much else to say about Lamar. He's a great player. He's going to be a great fantasy asset.
Yeah. One more thing about Lamar that I glossed over a little bit. J.K. Dobbins is a fantastic running back. J.K. Dobbins is right. Think about that class. Talent-wise, I don't think that he is anything below a DeAndre Swift. Maybe slightly below Jonathan Taylor, but even so, not really. I mean, this is a phenomenal running back. The comparison from him to who they had last year, that's going to make Lamar's life so much easier. Like, they're not going to key in on on the passing game nearly as much because their running game should be way more deadly. Yeah, I love Lamar. Great year coming up, I think. Do you want to jump into your top tier QB flag?
Yeah, so Jalen Hurts, I think he's primed for a big, either a boom or bust fantasy year. So Jalen Hurts, the issue with Jalen Hurts is that he has Gardner Minshew right behind him, right? So if he struggles this year with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, if he struggles and the Eagles struggle, it's very likely he gets replaced, next year. So, I think this is going to be the year where we either say Jalen Hurts is a bona fide star at quarterback, like a future star, or he's, a bust. I'm going to say that Jalen Hurts is somebody that is going to be a star this year. Or maybe not a star, but at least above average NFL quarterback. He is going to be a fantasy star, though. I think he's going to finish this season as a top 5 quarterback. Specifically, I think he's going to finish number 4. So he has all the weapons in terms of who to throw the ball to this year. There's no excuses like, oh, okay, well, the only person he has to throw the ball to is Devontae. Like, that's not an excuse anymore. You have A.J. Brown, So, Jalen Hurts, this is the make or break year, and I think this is a year where he's going to prove that he belongs in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I didn't take Lamar as my person to plant my flag with, it probably would have been Jalen, because I believe in Jalen. He, especially his fantasy, right? Like, I don't know. I don't think we're going to see. I mean, it's possible. I was going to say I don't think I see a Super Bowl, coming, with Jalen Hurts, but it's possible, especially, if they continue to build, a good team around Jalen. But in fantasy, my God, he missed 2 games last year, still QB9 overall. He had one bad game. He had whatever it was, like he had 6.8 points. Of course, it was against the Giants of all people. But, I mean, he just rattled 20-point games off, like crazy. And he has such a high ceiling. For me, the thing is, you don't trade for A.J. Brown and give him $100 million over 4 years unless you want to throw the ball more. So you have one of that. I think Dallas Goedert, maybe not fantasy, but talent-wise, is a top-tier tight end. He's a phenomenal player. Then Devonta Smith, I'm in love with Devonta Smith. I think he's a superstar. I had him rated over Jamar Chase, as a rookie, and obviously right now, doesn't look right, but I stand by it. I really think that he's at that level of a player. And then, I mean, we've seen what A.J. Brown can do. So, those are 3 elite passing weapons. I think Jalen I think he's going to smash. I'm with you. He's on my list of who could be QB1 overall, this season.
Yeah. So I'll jump into Jameis Winston actually.
Yeah.
So Jameis Winston, he had 2 really good games last year. The issue though with Jameis that he was throwing the ball to Marcus Callaway and Deontay Harris, and really those are the only 2 people that anybody in the world should even like know their names. So and now he's throwing the ball to Jarvis Landry. He's throwing the ball to potentially Michael Thomas and Chris Olave, right? So, I think Jameis Winston's going to have a big year. Now that doesn't mean he's going to have a top 10 season in fantasy, I don't think, but I think he could easily get top 12 or top 15 numbers. I have him probably I think he's going to finish right at 14. I think he's going to have a great year passing and with passing touchdowns. Last year, he cut down on the turnovers significantly. He only had, I think it was 2 picks over the entire year. So, that's obviously that was the big issue with Jameis and Tampa was the picks, right? So we know he can throw the ball. We know he can chuck it, and he has weapons now. So, I'm interested to see what Jameis is going to do. And, one thing that I do think, though, is obviously the biggest issue with Jameis is that he could have some really bad weeks. And I say that because if the Saints are in like a defensive game and they're running the ball a lot, then maybe he doesn't get a lot of touchdowns. Like maybe they hand the ball to Kamara for like 3-4 touchdowns like they seem to do every once in a while. Maybe he has a really bad week that week. So, you do have the issue with that, but I think the Saints offense is going to be better than expected. And I think Jameis is going to be a kind of a big factor in that if he stays healthy.
Yeah, you said something earlier about, how we're probably going to have a lot of disagreements and, might fight a little bit. I'm not fighting about either of your QBs here, right? Where you have to draft Jameis, the cost to acquire, Jameis is so low. Like, I don't see how he's not a value this year. Because like you said, those weapons, I mean, there had to have been 10 college teams that had a better wide receiver room last year than the New Orleans Saints did. I mean, it was a joke. It was an absolute joke. And that's why he had, multiple games with like terrible pass. I think he had like 2 or 3 games sub 200 passing yards. And the big thing you pointed out was that he reduces turnovers, right? Everyone remembers the 5,000, 30 and 30 season. And, we like to make jokes about it. Do y'all not remember this man got LASIK eye surgery on his way to New Orleans? He used to talk how he couldn't see down the field, right? Now, I'm not saying that was the only reason, but pair that with a potential reason. And then he sat behind Drew Brees. He worked with Sean Payton. He is in that scheme learning. And, if you follow beat reporters and you follow the New Orleans Saints, I know you do, but I do as well, seeing lots of stuff about Jameis talking about how, being around those great football minds taught him how to be a pro, taught him how to be a leader, and taught him more about the game, right? There was this discussion, I remember an interview where he was speaking about how Drew had taught him like, hey, you don't have to win the game every play. And that's what led to 30 interceptions. is when Jameis would be like, well, I could make this play. Well, yeah, you can. You're the first pick in the NFL draft. You're a Heisman Trophy winner. You're a superstar talent, but you don't have to. You can take the check down. Oh, by the way, Alvin Kamara is pretty good at that if you didn't know, right? I definitely think we're going to see a top 15 season from Jameis. And you're right. We could have some bad games. Maybe he throws a couple of picks, or you're right. Maybe they lean on the run game and the defense more. That's fine. For him to be my second QB, I'm going to take, I'll take a few games, 15 or less points a game, but he's going to have a lot of, 20-point games, and he's going to have a few 30-point games. I think Jameis could win you a lot of championships.
Yeah, and people forget too. The Saints were, I think they were either 5-2 or 6-2 whenever he went down. I can't remember if it was week 7 or week 8 they played the Bucks, but the Saints were a really good team, and the one of those losses too was because of COVID, right? Like they had the entire coaching staff was out for injury, and most of the team and a lot of the players too were out for injury week 2 or for COVID week 2. So you're talking about a team that could have been 5 or 6-1 when he went down with injury potentially. And they got better offensively this year. So, I definitely think Jameis is gonna have a good year. But let's jump into Mac Jones.
Yeah. So here's the homer pick, right? I guess we both have homer picks. I missed that for a second, right? You got your Saints player. I got my Pats player. Mac Jones, I think, is just so underrated. Like what he did as a rookie with those weapons on an offense that's highly sophisticated. I don't think anyone's going to say that Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick, didn't have a high-level football IQ requirement. And that's part of the reason that he was such a good fit there is he is so smart. He knows the game. He isn't the most talented, but holy crap, he just, and the way he's changed his body, if you haven't noticed, the dude has lost a lot of weight. Everyone remembers the old dad bod frat boy picture that came out. He's lost weight. He's, the team is talking about how he's like one of the true leaders in the locker room as a young player. Now, I don't expect huge numbers, but what I see is because they also have terrible weapons again. What I'm thinking is he's going to be, a mid-range QB2 in 2022, and they have to improve their weapons. I just don't believe 3 years in a row they're going to trot out these garbage offensive, receiving weapons for this player. I think in 2023 we're going to see him go into that QB1 range.
Yeah. So my issue with Mac has always been the lack of weapons, and honestly now the lack of coach. I don't think they've named an offensive coordinator yet, or if they even will. So I'm torn on Mac Jones. I really like Mac Jones as a prospect and as a player, especially after year 1. But I lean towards him being kind of a bust this year in terms of fantasy. And honestly, I kind of feel like the entire New England offense will be kind of a bust this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for those players to sneak into your lineups. Now, right, if we're talking best ball, which if you haven't tried best ball, it's a great format. You don't set lineups. All you do is you draft and you trade, and they optimize whatever best lineup you have based off your roster each week. I think Mac Jones is a better best ball player in 2022, along with most of the weapons you just talked about. But Jacoby Myers and Devontae Parker and Hunter Henry, I think, are all going to improve. Well, Devontae Parker wasn't there last year, but Myers and Henry, I think, are going to improve from what happened last year, mainly because I think Mac Jones is a better player now. He's had another year to develop and, get coached up. You're right. The coaching thing is kind of messed up. It's actually super messed up. What are we doing, Bill? But I don't know. I'm a homer, I guess. I just believe. I think Mac Jones is going to be a solid QB2. I would much rather him be my QB3, in a super flex league where I'm competing this season. But I think that his value is way lower than it should be. And I think there's a good chance he's the number 1 QB out of the 2021 draft class, in 5 years.
I agree with that. No, I do agree with that. In terms of actual, NFL talent, I do think he could easily be the number 1 of the the class. But let's jump into some of the college quarterbacks now. So, starting off with Devin Leary for you and Drake May for me. So Drake May was just announced that he won the starting quarterback job at UNC, at North Carolina. And so I think he's an interesting player to watch. So we actually get to watch him this weekend. He's going to be one of my watches. So I don't think UNC is going to be a great program this year. I don't think they're going to compete for the ACC or anything like that. But I think Drake May is going to prove that he's a legitimate star. I think he's going to challenge easily going to challenge as a first round quarterback in his draft year and in 2024. And I think he's going to be better than Sam Howell. So, I think he's going to be either honorable mention for all ACC, or at the very least, he's going to be a superstar talent. There's not a lot of great quarterbacks in the ACC with DJU struggling, Sam Hartman missing time with injury. So, we could easily see Drake May make the first team all ACC. So.
Yeah, huge news, winning that starting job for the true sophomore. This is a highly rated recruit. He's got that blue star status. My issue is, you pointed out, the weapons. What I don't understand, right, in this day and age, college football, why aren't they compensating people for their name, image, and likeness to come and be a skill position transfer for UNC? UNC has done great things in the recruiting world in the last few cycles. Like Charlotte's a big industry, right? They have a lot of money around there in that greater Charlotte-Durham area. The huge, alumni base. You're telling me they can't, find some money to bring, a player in? Maybe they don't get a Jordan Addison, but they couldn't get an Isaiah Neyor. They couldn't get, some of the, they couldn't get Tyler Harrow. I don't know. I'm just surprised, because I think we're going to have to rely on some unproven players, not only at quarterback, but at wide receivers and running back. So that worries me a little bit. Your Sam Howell comp, right? It's obvious, they're both there. I'm hoping, mainly projecting, that Drake May has the opposite career, right? Sam Howell's best season was as a freshman. His worst season was as a junior in 2021, this past season. And that's why he fell in the draft. Drake May is going, as he's, gets into college, all these good recruits that they've been coming in that are freshmen this year and sophomores, I think obviously they're just, going to get better. So I think 2023, looks to be a much better year, but I'm just hoping he looks good, don't get benched. Don't stink it up, basically, because that's going to make me really excited for this prospect. I like it. He's a good flag to be planted. When are we going to fight, huh?
I thought you were going to disagree with me about Drake May.
No, my big issue with May was I wasn't sure he was going to win the job. The fact that he wins the job, he's totally got the opportunity to, use that talent, because his talent, in high school was obvious. There's a reason he got the higher recruiting ranking and all that. So he has the opportunity. Let's see what he does with it. If he stinks it up this year, I'll be back on the naysayer club.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about Devin Leary? What do you?
So Devin Leary, North Carolina State University, will have a better team and a better season than Drake May. North Carolina State, I'm big on North Carolina State this year. They're good. They were good last year. And I think a 10-win season is totally possible. I think they're going to be in the ACC championship game. And if Clemson, is struggling, I think they could knock them off and win the ACC. I'm not projecting that. I assume Clemson will win. Talent usually prevails. But my biggest issue with Devin Leary is his size. He's a little smaller, right? He was listed on 24/7 as 6'1.5", 189 pounds. Now, when he, gets his official measurements, that's going to be big for me. Is he at least 6'1"? That's kind of, because he's not like a super athletic dude. I want him to be at least 6'1". I'd really like him to be 200 pounds. If he's, below 6'1" and below 200 pounds, I'm going to be a lot more worried. But so far, he's had a phenomenal college career, very prolific passer. And I think Devin Leary, right? I'm snagging him up in like the 4th and 5th rounds of Devy drafts everywhere because I think he has a very legitimate chance to be a first round pick. Now, this is my strategy. If I have Devin Leary and he declares for the 2023 draft and people are talking about him as a potential first round pick, I'm selling then, right? Come March. I don't want to have a Sam Howell on my hands. I don't want to have a Desmond Ritter on my hands because I'm not saying, yes, he's going to crush in the NFL. I'm not really that confident, especially because, the size is a little questionable. But he's going to have a great year, and people will be putting him in the first round of NFL mock drafts 2023. So with that hype, you should be able to get a lot of value based off of what you paid or going to pay right now for a player.
Yeah, so the only thing I actually agree with about Devin Leary is that if he is being talked about as a first-round pick, to sell him. I don't see any situation where Devin Leary is a first-round pick. I don't see him having the arm strength or the arm talent necessary to get drafted that high in the NFL. He's a solid spread quarterback in college, but I don't think he's anything more than that. He kind of reminds me of just, your generic like spread quarterbacks from years past. He's going to put up a lot of yards. He's going to put up a lot of touchdowns. He's going to score a lot of points, but I don't think he has the arm talent necessary to make it in the NFL. Just simple as that.
Finally, we have a disagreement.
So, all right, let's jump into running backs. So, Leonard Fournette for you and James Robinson. You want to start us off?
Yeah. So Uncle Lenny is such a value for a contender. RB21 in starts right now. 62 overall, right? So that's what? Beginning of the 6th round on average. So you're telling me I could go and grab, a couple quarterbacks, a couple of running backs, and a good wide receiver. And then I could add Leonard Fournette as my third, for my flex. He was an RB1 last year in 14 games. His points per game were fantastic. Tom Brady doesn't like rookies. He never has liked rookies, whether it's a receiver or running back. It's not going to happen with Rachaad White this year. I don't believe it. Rachaad White's a good player. We both liked him, going into the draft season. But him actually landing in Tampa Bay was a negative for me because Leonard Fournette got real money. 3 years, $21 million. That's real freaking money in the NFL for running back. They want Leonard Fournette to be the guy, and he was the guy. I think he's going to sleep his way to an RB12 finish. He's going to get the passing volume. He's going to get end zone work. Like, it's a RB21, people. Are you kidding me? You're going to get 2 seasons of very good value with this player.
Yeah, so my only issue with Leonard Fournette is actually the offensive line. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have had many injuries on the offensive line so far this year, and we're in August, so that's worrying to me. The interior offensive line is completely wrecked right now. I'm worried that he, has a slow start to the season, especially. And so for me, maybe it's time to kind of hold on Leonard Fournette. I agree with you though, when it comes to Tom Brady and rookies, but Bruce Arians is the same exact way. So it's not like the coach is going to like force him into the lineup because Bruce Arians doesn't like rookies either. So I have no intention of buying Rachaad White this year either. So in redraft, Leonard Fournette is a good option, but I don't know. I'm hesitant on the Tampa running game at least, because I think that the interior of the offensive line is going to kind of struggle, especially at the beginning of the year, until they kind of get some reps together. And honestly, the talent really isn't there depth wise for the interior of the offensive line. So I'm curious as to how that kind of the offensive line shakes up as they kind of can get some reps under them. Yeah,
you're right about the offensive line. That is a big concern. And you're also right. We have a new coach, so we don't exactly know how that'll factor in. But honestly, I'm pretty sure Tom Brady's going to get what Tom Brady wants. I'm not too worried about, that not happening. I mean, the man took off, 2 weeks to go do the Masked Singer, right? That's the fun rumor. In August, he just took time off, and it was like, okay, yeah, go for it, Tom. Have a great time.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if Brady's like full in. I messed up there though. I completely forgot that Bruce Arians retired for a minute. It's Todd Bowles now, so who knows what Todd Bowles wants to do with rookies. But I mean, yeah, I still think Leonard Fournette's kind of the bell cow here. But
see, you're right. The running game might not be there, but like he wasn't some great rusher last year. Like, yes, he was good in the end zone. He got 8 rushing touchdowns. He only had 811 rushing yards last year. His value is as a passer. He had 69 catches, 454 yards, and he tacked on another 2 receiving touchdowns. That's where his value is. And you're telling me that they have bad offensive line play. That screams Tom Brady screens to Leonard Fournette all day long.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So let's move on to the next one on the list. So I think we could lump these two guys together, James Robinson and Travis Etienne. So I don't know what your thoughts about James Robinson are. I kind of think we're going to disagree here maybe, but Travis Etienne I think is going to be the biggest bust in the NFL this year.
Whoa. Okay. All right. Taking the gloves off.
I don't even think it's going to be close. I think he's going to be the biggest bust by like a huge margin.
Wow. So then you must love my James Robinson take then.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're planting your flag on Travis Etienne in the negative manner.
Yes.
Damn. Wow. Okay. All right. Not only are you just going to fade him, you're going to put you're doubling down saying, I guarantee it.
Okay. Yeah. What I see with Travis Etienne is somebody who they want to use in the passing game, but showed zero ability to be used in the passing game out of Clemson, has shown little improvement in the preseason, and in general needs to be used in space. But realistically, if you're not used in the passing game in the NFL, you're not going to create that much space. He's kind of an outside zone runner, but honestly, that's not really what Jacksonville wants. I think James Robinson, if he comes back fully healthy, is going to be far and away the starting running back in Jacksonville again. I think he's going to get the first and second down work. And then I think if Travis Etienne even starts slow, I think he will completely take over even some of the passing work. Travis Etienne, I think they're going to try their best to get him work in the passing game and kind of get him in space. But unless Travis Etienne's in space, I don't have any interest in him.
Yeah, I mean, Etienne, obviously, he was a first-round pick, but he missed his entire rookie season. Because of that, he's going to get a lot of opportunity, especially right out the gate, because I think they're going to want to ease Robinson in. And he may not even, suit up week 1. My reason for, being so high on Robinson isn't, that I hate Travis Etienne. It's that he's going as RB44. RB44 for a player that only 2 years ago was a top, finisher at running back in fantasy. And all signs of that his recovery are going well. And now I don't hate Travis Etienne the way you do, apparently, but I agree. Like, yes, he did rack up a lot of receptions in college, but that was a lot more because of just the volume he was receiving. 2, the fact that the ACC sucks outside of, a handful of teams, really more a couple of teams. And, he is dynamic. He's very good. So playing against inferior competition, he's going to be able to gloss over his issues. His issue to me, by far and away, is vision. I never liked his vision. I always thought his vision was very suspect. Now, you give the dude open room, a window, boom, like he's gone. He's electric.
He's a track star.
Yeah, but their team should be overmatched talent-wise most of the time. So, like, I don't just expect their offensive line to just be, like, making these, craters in the defensive line for him to run through. So I'm not, like, all the way off Etienne the way you are, but I think that we're going to see a split. James Robinson does not need a lot of work to be a super, a good value. And if you're right, about Etienne, then James Robinson's probably the fantasy MVP in terms of, like, the most value based off of, what you had to put in to acquire Robinson.
Yeah, so just to explain what I mean by like he's going to be a bust, like I don't see him being the starter. Like when you draft, because Etienne's going in the fourth or fifth round in most drafts. So if you're drafting him that high, you expect him to get at least majority of the work. I don't think he's getting majority of the work after James Robinson comes back. I don't think he gets more than like 30 or 40%.
Wow. Yeah. I think it's going to be more of a split, honestly. As a flag planter for James Robinson, I was hoping that Robinson would get 40% of the work. Are you telling me he's going to get more than 50? Oh my God, he's going to be an RB2. Like I'm going to be able to start in my lineups every week if that's the case.
Yeah. So just to kind of jump into Alvin Kamara a little bit, right? So Alvin Kamara is getting drafted in the second round. I got him in. I just did a redraft league. I got him in the second round, at the tail end of the second round, actually. Alvin Kamara, other than the games he missed with injury and the games that he had Ian Book throwing to him, and Trevor Siemian, because Trevor Siemian's also terrible. But other than those games, he actually played very well with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. So, why are we fading Alvin Kamara? It was because of the suspension, but that's been said many times that it's not happening. So bump him back up your board. Put him in the top of the first round.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason was the suspension. Like some people mention, Drew Brees and, Sean Payton. I don't care. He's one of the best fantasy running backs ever. He missed games last year, and we've talked at length about, the issues injury-wise, QB-wise, New Orleans had last year, and he still was an RB1. Like, he's just way too good to not be an RB1. He's a super, like, you want to talk about short list? He is on a short list to finish as the overall RB1 this year. Now, in Dynasty, I'm a little worried because it sounds like 2023 is very likely that he's going to see a suspension. But in 2022, so if we're talking redraft, or especially if you're a contender, he's going to smash. Like, his value is there, and I'm all about it. I'm a little sad that, we're matching with nearly all of these, but I can't say good things about Alvin Kamara. Once all that stuff came out post Pro Bowl, I just threw out offers. 110 in 2022 draft, I turned it to Alvin Kamara. And people are looking at me like, you're crazy. You're giving a first? Like, yes, of course I am. It's Alvin fucking Kamara, people. He's that good. We just talked about how the offensive weapons are way better. And I'm not worried about this Jameis doesn't check the ball down thing. He is way too good to not get, his first 3 years, 81 receptions. Yes, that was with Drew Brees. Yes, that was with Drew Brees with a weaker arm towards the end of career. But I don't see a world, if he's healthy, where he doesn't get, 4 catches a game. That's 68 catches in a 17-game season.
Yeah. So let's move on to college running backs. So, you got Donovan Edwards. I have Audric Estime. So I'll kind of jump in about Audric Estime a little bit. So Notre Dame running back. Notre Dame's had a few injuries at running back here this year, but Audric Estime, he's kind of a bigger back. He was a big producer in high school, though. And I think he's going to be the guy there, this year. I think he's the next big thing with Notre Dame running backs. I wouldn't be surprised if he is a, day 2 pick in the NFL draft at a Notre Dame in a couple years.
Interesting. Yeah. I got to say, I'm leaning towards Chris Tyree being the starter, but you're right that, with Kyron Williams moving on, there's a big question mark. Like, basically, who cares what the depth chart says right now? By October, that's irrelevant. Like, if Audric Estime outplays him, which he's going to certainly get some touches and the opportunity, it would be his job. So, this is definitely a lower, tier player. Like, you don't have to invest significant draft capital or trade, value to get Audric Estime. But you're right. The room for growth is great. Especially we just talked about Avery went down with the ACL, so they're gonna be a run heavy team as normal. They got a good offensive line. Notre Dame, they were number 5 in the AP poll. They're going to be on a big stage. I like the pick.
So what about Donovan Edwards? What do you think about him?
Donovan Edwards, like, we're talking about completely different classes of players. Donovan Edwards, is a top 4 round I mean, it's probably higher. I'm being conservative. At least a top 4-round pick in the C2C and Devy world. He's probably more like a top 3-round pick. Super high rated recruit. This was the 4th running back out of the 2021 high school class, eligible for 2024 NFL draft. Got good size. He's 5'11", 190 out of high school. Or at least we're going off of what we have, because we all know those numbers can be fudged. But if he has that size, right, that's to me sounds like a player that's going to be, 5'11", 205, 5'11", 210 by the time, he has 3 years in a college weight program. Very good passer, very dynamic. And behind, Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum last year, who were kind of rock stars at the, Big Ten level, he still showed out as a true freshman, which Harbaugh is not a big fan of freshmen. Like, he was playing, Jesus, what the heck's the QB ahead of? He was playing the McNamara ahead of JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy's 5-star superstar talent. Like, he stays away from the freshmen, is my point, and he still showed out. When he had 2 good running backs ahead of him. Obviously, we know Michigan. They made a big step last year. I think they're going to be good. I'm not talking college football playoffs good, but they're still going to be good. Got to go to a line. Donovan Edwards, I think, is going to, supersede Blake Corum as the starting running back. I think Corum will be the spell back, kind of the way he was for Hassan Haskins last year. Donovan Edwards is like, I mean, how high is his ceiling? That's really my question. What is his ceiling in your opinion?
So the reports out of Michigan camp has been that he's a better receiver than most of the receivers on the roster. So what does that tell me? The ceiling is like number 1 overall fantasy potential. Like, that's his NFL potential, is number 1 overall.
Yeah.
I would give him a first-round pick. I'd take him in the first round. Like you're saying, I would take him in the top 3. I'm taking him in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can overpay to go get Donovan Edwards. Like, he's not on the Trevion Henderson and Braylon Allen tier for me, but he is right there. We recently did our rookie, our Devy running back rankings, and out of the 2024 class, I had him and Will Shipley right there as RB 3 and 4 for the 2024 class. I mean, I love this player. Their ceiling is so high, and with that recruiting profile and what we've already seen, I think we're going to see day 2 draft capital in the NFL. Like, that's kind of like the floor. Like, I think we're going to see at least a 3rd-round draft pick with the potential of being a high 2nd or, maybe even 1st. But we all know that doesn't happen that often, even for the better backs now.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else about college running backs? You want to jump into wide receivers?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah. So, why don't you start us off here again with yours?
So, you might have suspected this, but Michael Pittman is who I'm planting my flag on for a wide receiver. I am in love with Michael Pittman. He's wide receiver 14 overall, in startups. It's a player that has great size, has good speed, and just has the best quarterback, just added the best quarterback he's ever played with, right? The jump he made from year 1 to 2 was huge. I think he can make a similar jump from 2 to 3. I would not be surprised if in 1 year we're all talking about Michael Pittman as a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. I would not be surprised at all.
Yes, so you stole both of my values here with Pittman and Cooks. I don't have anything to say. They're both they both have amazing situations. They're both the only legitimate receiver on the team. So, for me though, DJ Shark and Devontae Smith, those are my 2. I think obviously DJ Shark is a completely separate tier from all these other players on the screen, right? But my thing with DJ Shark is I think people forget how good he was when he was in the Jacksonville before the injury. I don't think he played at all last year. Right? I think he got hurt in the preseason, if I remember right. And my thing with Shark is, right, he's more of a deep threat, but I think he's a good player that is on a prove-it deal, and I think he's going to look to prove himself. I think he's going to get a wide receiver 3 season at a minimum, and he's basically free right now. You can get him in the 15th, 16th round of a redraft league and just stash him and just say, well, maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't, and it's like basically nothing. It doesn't matter at all at that value. So for me, I think he's the best sleeper prospect you can get out there because he's proven he's been successful in the past. He's a young player. It's not like he's like completely fallen off the rocks. Unless you're concerned about the injury, there's no reason to go pick him up.
Yeah, I like the pick. I think he is. You're right. Like at value, it's hard to beat because he's basically free. Just unless I'm in a best ball league, I don't think it likely that I'm going to be happy to put DJ Shark in my lineup. It'd be one thing if they had a good, a very good QB. Jared Goff is a lot better than I think we give him credit for, but I don't think he's a great QB. Additionally, I love him, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Especially as an NFL player, not as much at fantasy where the value's at, but Amon-Ra and TJ Hawkinson, I think, are two of the better players at their position in the league. They're very good. And then, Jameson Williams was drafted to play the role that DJ is going to play until he's healthy. And the contract situation, also it's like, well, what are you going to get? But you're right. Value-wise, he's good. I think best ball is probably better because he's going to have games where he catches a 50-yard touchdown. He's going to have, games where he has a couple of 30, 40-yard catches. I just think it's going to be very up and down, and that's what's hard to, deal with for a lower player in your lineup leagues.
Yeah, so for what I think for DJ is, I think that's a good season for him for the Lions to just redshirt Jameson Williams. I don't think there's any reason for them to rush him back from injury this year. I wouldn't play him at all, regardless of if he says he's healthy in January or December. I'm not playing him. So that's my thing with Jameson, and I think they just play out DJ Shark for the rest of the year. And for Devontae, jumping into him, he's the number 2 behind, AJ Brown, and we already talked about Jalen Hurts. I think Devontae Smith is going to have a good year. At least, I think he's going to be a wide receiver too. And, I think there's some value there.
Yeah, I already let the cat out of the bag. For those that didn't already know, I had Devonta Smith as my number 1 wide receiver in the 2021 draft class. For fantasy, for football, I did. And I'm not backing off that much from that. Like, yes, if I'm re-ranking them now, I'm going to put Jamar over them. What? Do you put Waddle? Actually, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about it for a while. Waddle or Devonta Smith? Who do you want in fantasy?
I'd probably go with Waddle.
I'm sticking to my guns with Devonta Smith.
In redraft, I'd say Waddle.
Redraft, yeah, I'll go Waddle. But Dynasty, give me Devonta Smith. I like the player more, first of all, the most important thing. And I don't think Tua is much better, if at all, than Jalen Hurts. So, that doesn't necessarily, I'm not excited about the QB position relatively. And AJ Brown is, he's great and all, but Tyreek Hill's just as good. It's just not like Waddle's going to become the wide receiver 1. Devonta Smith reminds me of the Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster situation. Devonta Smith's probably going to be better in fantasy now with AJ Brown because he's not going to be against the best coverage. Last year, they said, okay, we need to stop Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. That's it. Their second wide receiver was garbage. Okay, now you have AJ Brown, on one end, Devonta on the other, and then you have Dallas over the middle. All 3 of them are helped by the fact that you brought in, that other superstar. So I think Devonta is going to feast on the second cornerbacks of teams, and because of that, he was set the rookie receiving record. It's not like he didn't do well. It's just we put these unreasonable expectations because JJ and Jamar came out in back-to-back years. They're like, well, if you don't have 1,200, receiving yards as a rookie, you suck. No, that's just not how.
Well, the funny thing is about both of those players, right, is both of them had legitimately other weapons around them to prevent safety help over the top.
It's a really good point.
So Adam Thielen was JJ's safety help. Like
Yeah.
people would shade to AJ Thielen more because he was the more dangerous threat that year, at least in the eyes of NFL coaches. And then Jamar Chase, right? He had T. Higgins, he had Tyler Boyd, so you can't put safety help over the top.
Yeah.
And at least not without helping those guys get open, which.
It's a really good point.
So that's my thing about the wide receivers. So I think it's tough to it's an adjustment process to play at a wide receiver at the NFL level. So
yeah,
but let's jump into some of the college guys. So
hold on.
Oh, you got something else? All right.
Yeah, let me get some Brandon Cooks love in here, man. Jeez, now we're gonna really fight. I kid, of course, but no, right? So Brandon Cooks. What more can you say about a player as like a professional? Say how good of a pro he is. 4 teams, 5 quarterbacks, 5,000 yard, 5 1,000 yard seasons. Like he did it with Brady and did it with Breeze, but he also did it with Jared Goff, and he also did it with Sean Watson, right? Those are 3 good ones. But he also did it with Goff, and he also did it with Davis Mills / Tyrod Taylor. I believe in Davis Mills. I think Brandon Cooks is going to have a better year than he did last year. And I think Nico Collins is an interesting number 2 because we were just talking about how important it is to have, someone to take targets away from you. Nico Collins is one of my breakouts, right? Like he could have been this player instead of, Brandon Cooks for me if I was going for someone on that DJ Shark level. But Brandon Cooks, he's still young. He's still 28. Like he's in his prime, I think you're going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 years of very legitimate fantasy numbers. And if Davis Mills takes that step, which I believe he can, this is the number 1 recruited quarterback out of his high school class. Brandon Cooks could be a wide receiver 1 again. It's a longer shot, but I think he's going to have very good value.
Yeah, I like Brandon Cooks a lot. I've been saying that all offseason, so I don't have anything else to say about Cooks. Anything else you want to cover with him?
No. Now we can go ahead. Now that I got to say my piece.
All right. So Malik Neighbors and Deshaun Stribling. So I would argue that probably very, very few people know who Deshaun Stribling is. But I'll let you go first and kind of talk about Malik Neighbors, and then I'll kind of talk about Deshaun Stribling a little bit.
Yeah. So Malik Neighbors, not as good of a diamond in the rough as you came up with Stribling, but a lot of people aren't really on Neighbors. A lot of people don't know about Neighbors unless they're, deep in the Devy and C2C world. So everyone knows Keishon Butte, though, right? Superstar, amazing talent. Well, Butte missed most of the year last year, and Malik Neighbors on a dysfunctional, super toxic LSU team was probably their best offensive weapon. Like he looked very good as a true freshman. This is a player that has a good chance. Like him and Butte, they make up about as good as a wide receiver room in the country. And I think Neighbors is getting slept on. You can get him super late in drafts. Just a value. Go trade for him before he blows up in 2022.
Yeah, I agree. He's going to get a lot of open looks with Butte there. So go ahead. Let's just go ahead and jump into Deshaun Stribling. So I'm going to shock you here.
Buckle up.
Deshaun Stribling is going to be on the Biletnikoff short list, the top 5 Biletnikoff. Deshaun Stribling plays for Washington State. He, as a true freshman out of Hawaii. So if you don't know, so last week we did a topic of high school production. I looked up all of Deshaun Stribling's stats from Hawaii from his high school year. He actually scored better than in the same tier as all 3 of the ones who had 100% hit rate coming out of college. He was in the top tier. Yes, he played in Hawaii, so you can absolutely argue competition level there. And then he comes in as a true freshman, and he has over 40 receptions and over, I think it was like 450 yards, and he had a few touchdowns. True freshmen don't play in college as true freshmen, as wide receivers. That's just not a thing that happens often. And so for him to come in and take the lead on the job in Washington State, which is a air raid offense. They have an upgraded quarterback with Cameron Ward. Deshaun Stribling, I think he will be a day 2 pick in the NFL, and I think he has potential to go into the first round if he continues to explode like I think he will. I think his best case scenario is a bottom of the list of the the Biletnikoff like people on the short list, and I think it's very likely that he's either second team All Pac-12 or first team All Pac-12. The only thing that I think could maybe kind of unseat him is Jordan Addison.
Wow. Now that is planting your flag right there, folks. I gotta say, I don't hate it. Like, yes, it's a bit of a hot take. Like, we're planting our flags here, folks, but like, this is a talented player. Like you said, as a true freshman, had the numbers, right? He's 6'2", 202. He's got the size. He showed off as a freshman. And the other part is you kind of glossed over. I love Cameron Ward. Like, I think he's another super deep sleeper. He was on a list of 3 players for me to be my plant your flag at the Devy level. You know what, honestly, as you were talking about this, Biletnikoff finalist, tell me this doesn't sound like a transfer candidate to get, big money in the NIL world for his true junior season, a la Jordan Addison, right? I love this pick. I mean, honestly, I'm pissed that you found it before me. It's a great, it's a great diamond in the rough. And like you said last week, we talked about this. He checks that box and a check plus for our projections, based off of high school production. So, hats off to you. I think you have the best flag planted today.
Yeah. So I don't know. You have anything else about either of these two guys, or?
No, I mean, that's it. Mic drop, Sean Stribling, boom.
All right. So tight ends. We pretty much have the top 3 of the top 5 guys on here, and then Cole Kmet. So, I'll kind of let you have the floor, kind of talk about the your 2, and then we'll talk about mine.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit with Darren Waller with this injury, an older player. He's definitely not my top 5 anymore. Right, this is a higher tier, lower tier. I think Darren Waller being in a lower tier for this is is more appropriate. But anyways, right, for my guys, TJ Hawkinson, I think is a supremely talented player. He showed off last year before he got injured that he could produce an elite level. The year before he was tight end 5. Like, I don't understand what's not to love. I mean, he's going in drafts as tight end 6 in the beginning of the 6th round in a super flex or a tight end premium super flex league. Like, are you kidding? Like, he's a superstar in my opinion. He's tight end 3 in my dynasty rankings. I have him just above Kelsey. Like,
yeah. So the thing about Hawkinson is he actually is helped by Amon-Ra St. Brown's breakout and DJ Shark's signing. The thing is with Hawkinson is whenever he was at the beginning of the season last year, he was getting the entirety of coverage. That's what Kelsey has to do next year, right? Kelsey's going to get the linebacker, the safety, and honestly, he might get triple teamed. And that was how was happening to TJ Hawkinson last year. He was getting all the attention. They were bracketing him. So what I'm thinking about what happens with TJ with the weapons that they have now, at least the improved weapons that they have, I think TJ is a legitimate top 3 tight end again, like you said, right? And I think it's only going to go up for him. So
yeah.
But moving on to Mark Andrews, right? So Mark Andrews, he was tight end 1 last year, but let's just pump the brakes a little bit on Mark Andrews. One of the reasons Mark Andrews had so good of a year as he did is because Huntley checked the ball down way more than Lamar Jackson. And guess what? Tyler Huntley's shown that in the preseason with Isaiah Likely.
Yeah.
So I think you can kind of pump the brakes a little bit on Mark Andrews. Yes, he's still in the top 5, but I'd say he's probably a little bit closer to the the bottom tier of that than he is the top tier. He's still a fantastic option, but I think it's a little bit too much.
So you're planting your flag in a negative way again, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I just can't get on board with Mark Andrews hate. I'm sorry. I'll fight you. Fight. I mean, yes, last year was amazing, and I don't expect him to continue that last year. But Travis Kelce, what Travis Kelce did for all these years, it's going to eventually stop. I don't think that happens at 22, but eventually it will, right? And without Kelce in the picture, really, like what we consider elite tight end production is very different. And I expect Mark Andrews to be very much a definer of what elite tight end production is in the post-Kelce world. I think he's likely to be producing him and Pitts and probably Hawkinson. See, I don't think he's tight end 3 for me. I got Pitts and then Andrews in my rankings. But I think Mark Andrews is going to be there. I mean, yeah, Huntley was a little more, but it wasn't like he wasn't still killing it with Lamar. Like he was still doing absolute great work. So, yeah, I got to defend Mark Andrews. He's still,
so
top of the top.
I mean, I'm not saying he's at the bottom. What I'm saying is I have Pitts. I think Pitts is going to have the best season. And then I think Kelce has the number 2 season because he's really the only legitimate threat. And he has plenty of chemistry with Mahomes. And then I have 3, I have Hawkinson. And then I have 4, Mark Andrews. And then 5, Darren Waller. So I think you could flip Hawkinson and Mark Andrews. And I wouldn't argue with you. But, my thing is with I mean, probably should have put Pitts on here. I think Pitts is the number 1 option and I don't even think it's close. But going to Darren Waller, the reason I actually bumped Darren Waller down was, the injury passed. But I'm kind of torn on Darren Waller a little bit, right? I think if he comes back from the injury, fine. He's going to be a legitimate option. But the thing is does he play for the full 17? And we talked about that a little bit before, so.
Yeah, Waller, I'm concerned about longevity is my biggest issue. I would not be surprised at all if he goes and has an enormous season in 2022. But, he was a wide receiver converted to a tight end. And really, honestly, how many tight ends are producing, an elite level over 30? Yes, I'm projecting Kelce to do that. But the more elite you are as an NFL tight end career-wise, the more likely it is shown in history for you to have elite seasons late, a la Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, Jason Witten. If you are racking in Pro Bowl and All-Pro honors year after year as a tight end, you can track it, and we'll put that out, more overtly. But those tight ends are way more commonly scoring fantasy points at elite level later in their careers. So that's why I give the nod to Kelce, whereas Waller, it's like, well, he's, really new to this, but he's already old. He's having injury concerns. I'm worried about it.
Yeah, I don't have anything else about my tight ends. Do you want to jump into Cole Kmet?
Yeah, I mean, Cole Kmet, this is a player that I really like. He comes out of one of the known tight end production factories of Notre Dame. And last year, in an abysmal offense, he was still a solid tight end with no touchdowns. Somehow he got no touchdowns. It was a fluke. He had the 7th most targets in the NFL at the tight end position. There's just no way he's not going to build on last season. There's no way he's going to continue not getting in the red zone. Cole Kmet is going as tight end 12. He's going in the 11th round in tight end premium leagues. He is such a value to me. Now, do I expect Cole Kmet to, be a tight end 5 this year? No, probably not. But for a younger player that in year 3, I expect to make a pretty good jump. And, even if Justin Fields doesn't work out, I don't see how he's not going to be better than he was as a rookie. I think Cole Kmet this time next year, we're going to be talking as, the way we talked about Dallas Goedert there for, a couple years ago, the way we talked about not Pitts, but TJ Hawkinson, a year ago. Like, he's going to be that new next thing. He's going to be the new sweet hotness. Like, go grab Cole Kmet now. He's still very cheap. And in a year from now, you're going to be thanking me so much.
The issue with Cole Kmet is the offense.
Yeah.
The offense is terrible. Or at least is projected to be terrible.
I agree, but like, are you in on Darnell Mooney?
I like both these guys.
You know what I mean? Like, we've seen bad offenses produce very good to elite, fantasy production in the past plenty of times. So that doesn't worry me too much.
And it's a tight end, right? So I was just saying, as a way to kind of be the devil's advocate here, I think Cole Kmet, in terms of if you're going to be worried about him, you have to be worried about the offense. But the thing is, tight ends aren't reliable. So if he's getting, if he's even getting, top 7 targets, and he's the number 2 option in this offense, and I don't think it's even close. Yeah. So I don't see, what to like about, not to like about Cole Kmet.
Yeah, he's going to get the work. He's going to get the targets. And if he and Justin Fields make a bit of a step, like, he could shock the world. Like, he could be in that second tier, because usually there's like 1, 2, maybe 3 tight ends at the top that are just super producers, but then there's always like 3 or 4 that are like a ways below, but then like they have their own gap from the third tier. Like, he could get into that second tier where that's a big value, on half of the players in your leagues. That's, not that much of a hit against the people with those super elite tight ends. So, yeah, I don't know. I could keep going on for days about Cole Kmet. I haven't said enough good things about him this offseason. So I just had to like really draw this one out.
Yeah. So we have a question in the chat for us about Darrell Henderson or Brian Robinson. What are your thoughts there? Which one would you take at the same ADP?
So honestly, I don't care what format. I'm going Darrell Henderson. I'm not even going to try and say it. I'm a QT poet. Hey, thanks for the question. Really appreciate it. But really, this comes down to me. I don't like Brian Robinson, like, as a prospect. We both weren't big fans. Obviously, everyone knows about Antonio Gibson, and that is going to give Robinson the opportunity. But Darrell Henderson, we've already heard that they're going to get carries. Like, it's not going to be just a Cam Akers show. And you want to talk about who would be an elite handcuff if Akers cannot get over this injury or, gets injured again. All of a sudden, Darrell Henderson could be a legit RB1. Like, I don't expect that, but I think you're going to get weekly weekly production at a flex level with the opportunity to really crush. I don't believe in B-Rob. What about you?
Yeah, so I think all the Antonio Gibson stuff is just noise. I think it's training camp noise. I have Darrell Henderson, and I don't have Brian Robinson really in a tier at all. I think he's a backup, and I think he's a handcuff to Antonio Gibson, and that could be a decent stash. Antonio Gibson's had issues with injuries, but I think Darrell Henderson's your option there. So. But let's kind of jump into some of the college tight ends. So Jatavion Sanders and Michael Trigg are the 2 college tight ends. So we'll kind of jump into Jatavion Sanders first here. You want to start us off?
Yeah. So, I mean, this kind of is revealing about the landscape of tight ends at the college level. Like, yeah, Michael Trigg. I love Michael Trigg too, but I was trying to go for someone that wasn't, the rage of the Devy community already, right? Jatavion Sanders basically didn't play at all as a true freshman last year. This is all upside. Number 1 athlete out of the recruiting class out of high school, super athletic, right? Everyone's jumping on that Texas train, so let me do it too. He's basically free in C2C leagues. So, yeah, I mean, plus I'm a known hater of Jaleel Billingsley, so – give me the high upside athlete of Sanders.
Yeah, I don't have much about Trigg really. I think Sanders with Billingsley, the question marks there. I think Ted Sanders is a really good pickup, and Trigg, it's just hype, right? There's hype all throughout training camp or fall camp from the Ole Miss tight end. So, but honestly, for the college tight ends, I think we've said it before. I don't really have terrible interest in Devy tight ends. I'd rather, kind of wait for the NFL draft and kind of pick them up then and kind of stuff like that, or trade for tight ends. But that's just kind of my process there. But do you have anything else you want to talk about for the episode, or?
Yeah, just for Trigg, I mean, I just want to say there's a reason for the hype, and it's legit. This is a very good athlete. They also got very little action, definitely more than Sanders as a freshman when they were at USC. But they went over with Jackson Dart for a reason. They went to a team. I think Ole Miss is, they were a good team. They won 10 games last year, like in the freaking SEC West. Like I think Ole Miss is going to be a better football team than USC this year. I'll say it. And I think Dart's a good player. He's got a very high ceiling. So the issue is just what the cost. Like, he is getting really hyped up. So, beware. But hey, if you're in a C2C league, I think he's going to produce very well. And with his athleticism, he should maintain his value, up through the NFL combine and all of that. So yeah. I like it.
All right. Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about today, or?
Well, that's really all we had. It was great. We got, some good comments and questions from our viewers. Thank you for that. We really appreciate it. What we should do is I think try and make a little, room for those questions every episode if we can. So please get at us, DM, tweet, whatever. You can see our handles just below. We'd love to hear what you have to think about our thoughts, what you're interested in hearing us talk about. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, share, tweet.
Yeah, I did want to say we got some comment from a Huskers fan in the comments, and he's saying he thinks that they're going to win the national championship. I don't know about that, but we'll see. I would hope that they honestly, I don't even think they're going to compete for the Pac-12, but we'll see. I would have liked for them to have started Howard if they're going to try to compete long term, but clearly he wasn't ready. So
yeah, go Huskers.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks everybody for listening, and let us know what you think in the comments, and give us a like and subscribe. And thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.